Today, we're doing some DIY. What's happening, guys? You alright? If you follow me on Instagram, you will know that I am renovating my house. The project I'm currently working on is a bespoke, custom-made dog bath in our utility room. There's a couple of reasons we want a standalone dog bath. The main is we've got a Springer Poodle cross that loves getting muddy, loves getting messy, is always in the rivers, and bringing her home, carrying her up the stairs, it hurts your back having to carry her every time. Surprisingly, 20 kilos of dog adds up every time you're going up and down the stairs. So we had a dark, dingy old utility room, and we decided we were going to gut it all out, strip it out, start fresh, build a bespoke dog bath in it, plus some additional cabinets. I'm not a professional trade person, as some of you will already know, so this is not a tutorial. If anything, any of you watching this that have more experience than me, if you notice I'm doing something terribly wrong, which is probably most things, sling a comment down below and let me know how I should be doing it, and I'll hopefully improve on future projects. I've been using the internet a lot to research this, other YouTube videos, there's loads of blogs and just general internet content on how to do things in your house, how to do DIY, and the worst case I approach it as, if I get it wrong, it's fine, I'll just redo it. And ultimately, if I'm doing it myself, you can redo it quite a few times and still break even on a project. Thankfully, thus far, I haven't had to redo any significant projects that I've done. I'm halfway through the project, so I'm going to use my Instagram stories as the video for how I've got to where I am currently. When we moved in, there's a flagstone floor, there was a little toilet built into the room and some really old kitchen cabinets. There's also a really large old water or immersion heater boiler and a water filter, which turns out is massively out of date and not needed. The washing machine and tumble dryer are also in that space. The first thing we did was get a good gas engineer in, put in a more efficient combi boiler which suits a two-person household. Then I pulled out all of the cabinets, pulled up the floor. It was quite a bit of graft, but took my time and did it. Lots of tip runs, dumping all of the stuff that couldn't be recycled to get us to a room that was just completely bare. The next job was to clean the space, get all of the dust out. I've got a cheap but commercial type vacuum cleaner that has proper sealed dust bags in it, so I spent a good number of hours hoovering up all of the dust, washing everything down and getting everything nice and clean. The next job was to relocate some of the dodgy wiring that was already in place. So I pulled out a lot of the wiring that just wasn't needed, returned the light switch to its original location, and just generally cleaned up a lot of the wiring that was just old and odd and in weird places. As I wasn't adding a ring main and I was just amending one that was already in place, that is perfectly allowed. Not wanting to have a go at plastering myself, I got in a couple of local lads which added some plasterboard to a couple of the walls, extended the ceiling which was missing some plaster to it, and then skimmed the walls, which will eventually end up being exposed. I'm very glad that I got pros in to do this, because God knows what would have happened if I'd tried and how long it would have taken. The next step was to lay the flooring. This is the first time I tried flooring. We went with a porcelain tile, which almost has like a wood effect. We wanted it to look quite natural in there. We laid everything out, spent a lot of time laying down tiles before we had even attempted to start it, to have a good idea of where things needed to go. I did invest in a laser guide to help keep all of our lines nice and neat and where they should be. Primed the floor before we laid the tiles. I was really nervous about mixing the adhesive, and it was really stressful knowing that if I took too long, it would just go off. First batch went down really well. Mixed the second batch, also went down really well. Mixed the third batch, and I just put too much water in it, and it was an absolute slop. So we got about 5 tiles in, everything was just a mess, so Emily made the correct call, which was, let's bin this off, and unfortunately we did waste a bag of adhesive, but we ended up with a better product because we let it all dry off, went back to fight another day. Got one of our pals in to give me a hand. He's done this stuff for absolutely years, used to be a professional tiler, showed me how to mix the adhesive properly, and also taught me how to actually cut the tiles, which was also a terrifying prospect. He came in and we cut all of the tiles, but ran out of time. The following day on my own, I then mixed some adhesive, finished off the tiling. Naturally, I ran out of adhesive with one tile left to put down, so I had to go and get some more. And then yeah, the floor was down. Spent many hours grouting and then cleaning the tiles with the sponge. If you've done it before, it is absolutely brutal, especially when it's a space that big and you have to do it all on the floor. But got there in the end, and now I'm really happy with the floor. We then spent a bit of time trying to work out what colours we want to put on the wall and the bespoke cabinets that I'm going to be making, and also the tiles for the dog bath. As I said earlier, I'm not a carpenter. Don't have any real experience in trade, so a lot of what I do is either blagging, just trying to work it out, or looking at things online and seeing how I can replicate it. So like I said, the way I've done it is probably not right, and I've already learned from it. So I added some battens to the wall and then put some thermo panels on it, which are basically tile backing panel things. I then built a frame for the dog bath itself and started working out how to fix the plumbing into the dog bath. Again, something I haven't done before. As I've learned from the internet, DIYers typically overbuild, and I think this is a great example of that. I built a structure that is so sturdy, you could probably build a house on top of it and it would be absolutely fine. But I was working on the basis of, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm not an expert, I don't want it to fall apart, I don't want it to leak, and if my dog is in it, I do not want it to fall apart, so I'm quite happy over-engineering it. It'll ultimately mean it's more expensive because I'm using more timber, but it's something I'm very comfortable with in this scenario. Learned how to do plumbing, which is surprisingly easy, so I went for solvent welds, which is basically a chemical which is mega aggressive that you paste around the inside of the pipe fitting and the pipe itself. It basically melts it a bit and it's super sealed and strong. I then realized that the tap that I've bought isn't actually going to fit. So I've ended up cutting through the thermo panels to lower it. I can get some extension bars so that I can attach the piping to the mains. The problem with it is actually fixing the tap to the wood itself. So I've actually bored out some holes in the wood so it does fit nice and flush. 24 hours later, after doing the plumbing, tested that it all worked. Very happy because it was nearly built all around that, and if it hadn't worked I would have had to have dismantled nearly everything. First time ripping 2.4 meter sheets of moisture resistant MDF, or any sheet material for that matter. A lot of people don't like doing it. For some reason I quite enjoy it. The biggest problem with it was that it got delivered to the front of the house and I had to carry a 40 kilo sheet of material to the back of the house on my own, and it was painful as you can possibly imagine. At this point I've built the sides up on the dog bath. This will all end up being tiled. Each side of this is going to be additional cabinets that I'm going to make at a later date. The next job was to seal all of the edges with some silicone, then prime all of the surfaces, and then use they call it a membrane, although it's a paint which rubberizes, basically paint it everywhere. All of the edges have been taped at this point as well. Ultimately the goal with this is to create a space that can actually hold water and be fully waterproof in its own right. Obviously it is still going to be tiled as well. The idea is that it's completely waterproof before you even put the tiles down. And now we're finally at the point where I can start tiling, so we're getting even closer. Ooh. The recap of how I got to this point is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, so we'll save the rest of this build for another video. If you have any questions, bang them in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. See you on the next one, I guess. Who knows what it'll be.